Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the October 8th, 2024 Planning Board meeting. I'd like to start with a pledge, please. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, nation under God, indivisible, with liberty. Do have some standard announcements here. The emergency exits are to your left and right of the room. Restrooms are out the door and to the left. Please be sure to sign in the attendance sheet at the back table, as Dave is doing. And if you need any contact information for the planning department, there's business cards for that. Also on the back table is a copy of any resolutions that will be read tonight along with this agenda. Please silence your cell phones, and if you have to have any conversations amongst yourselves, please take them out the doors and close them behind you so you don't disrupt those who are speaking before the board. We did have two sets of meeting minutes. One is for August 13th, another is 27th. I was not here for the 27th. I was absent also. 13th, okay. So I guess we can approve them if there's no changes. Start with the 13th. Any questions for Lisa? You guys all set? Yep. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes of the 13th.
I'll move to accept.
Ernie moves, Joe seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
One abstention, and Scott is absent this evening. And the 27th, I was absent for that. Unless there's any comments for Lisa, I'll entertain a motion for approval for those.
I'll move.
Al moves.
Second.
Ernie seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
3-0 with myself being abstaining. Thank you. We've received some correspondence for the Timberview Estates. And we have, let's see, is Drew here? Simona? No? Okay, so we won't have a town board update this evening. Keith Maynard, Planning Board, update.
Good evening, Keith Maynard, Project Manager for the Town of Victor. So your next Planning Board meeting is Tuesday, October 22nd at 7 p.m. There's a preliminary application for the Nikoloff subdivision, Blasey Road. Applicant is requesting approval to develop 42.4 acres into 8 lots with driveways coming off of Blasey Road. Then there's a site plan application for Tambi Electric Building Addition. This is at 614 Fishers Run. Applicant is requesting approval to construct a 2,700 square foot building addition and to replace an existing fence. Then there is the Monkelban retaining wall. It's 6733 Anton Rise. Applicant is requesting approval to construct a retaining wall across the property to create a terrace for a safer slope. The retaining wall will range from 5 to 8.5 feet tall. And lastly, there's preliminary final application for the Smith subdivision. This is 421 County Road 9. Applicant is requesting approval to subdivide a second parcel from the existing parcel at 421 County Road 9. Lot 1 was proposing a lot line adjustment for a total of 1.50 acres. Lot 2 will consist of an existing home with driveway access to County Road 9 on 2.068 acres, and Lot 3 will consist of 0.92 acres with access onto County Road 9. This is the second step in a major subdivision. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you.
Okay, we have 3 items on the agenda this evening. The first one is not a public hearing. It's a sketch application for Victor Heights Parkway subdivision. Applicant is requesting acknowledgement of a complete application to subdivide a 3.78 acre parcel into 2 separate parcels. There are currently 2 existing 16,000 square foot buildings on the parcel. This is the first step of a major subdivision, and only acknowledgement of a completed application will be considered at this meeting. Is there someone here that will be speaking on this? Okay. I will park this one for the moment. and we can come back to it at the end of the meeting if necessary. Otherwise, it moves on to Keith's agenda for the next. So the next one is a public hearing. This is a change of use for Stage 585, the applicant, the owner's Great Eastern Mall LLC, Eastview Mall. The applicant is requesting approval for a change of use to the space formerly occupied, I assume that's formerly occupied, by Nocino's Restaurant and Bar, also Biaggi's before that. Applicant is looking to add live music and a stage to the site. Good evening.
Good evening. Brad Humberstone, Mitchell Design Build, on behalf of John DeTitta, the applicant. Change in use from a restaurant and bar to a restaurant and bar with a stage. All allowable under town code. I don't know what else, what questions you have, but I'm happy to entertain. The tenant is not here, unfortunately. He is sick, so I'm obviously representing us.
Well, if you could just point out the changes that you're proposing or the applicant's proposing inside the building. I believe there's nothing changing outside, is that correct?
There are no changes on the exterior of the building.
There's a laser pointer on your desk there, and you can point to the screen to your left.
All right, yeah. So really, when you walk in the entrance, no changes here. Here's the existing bar and sort of bar seating area. No changes proposed there. Nothing in the restrooms, nothing in the kitchen. The only major change, and this isn't final, this will be finalized for when we submit for building permit, would be the addition of a stage. There's the removal of it's called a banquet room or a party room. Essentially, everything's going to be opened up into a larger space. Talks of the stage going here, maybe at this side, but really it's just reworking the existing square footage. No additional square footage, still a restaurant and bar, just with a stage,
Mm-hmm.
That's essentially.
Okay, and as far as the proposed operational schedule, I guess, or, how much we'll be using it as a entertainment venue versus other things?
I'll estimate here. I'm guessing that's based on success of how everything goes. I mean, as of right now, the larger stage area is scheduled for like a Friday and Saturday, when more people would be there. The rest of the time, Monday through, I think, Saturday. I don't think he's opening on Sunday. But I don't know that for a fact. Would be more of just restaurant bar.
Okay. All right.
Traditional restaurant style.
I guess I'll open it up to the board. Actually, I don't know, Wes, do you have any input right off the bat? I know we got
Yeah.
different fire code.
Yeah, Wes Petty, Labella Associates. I did have the opportunity to take a look at the application that was submitted. And this was submitted pursuant to Section 21149 of the Victortown Code, which basically indicates that a change of use necessitates the need for a site plan to come before the planning board. And that particular, we talked about that internally with town staff about the need for these types of applications. There are circumstances where a change of use probably should come to the planning board for site plan review, where there are certain conditions, where there are qualifiers, such as the change of use is going to result in a change, and there are a number of required parking spaces, or the parking configuration and arrangement to the site, the ingress and egress to the site. But for a straightforward change of use for property, it really doesn't make sense for a site plan application to come before the planning board, especially when it's a permitted use as of right. So we've talked about modifying the town code so that future projects such as this site plan application doesn't come before the planning board, because there's really nothing that we're reviewing and approving in terms of external site changes. It's all internal to the building, which really isn't subject to the planning board's review and jurisdiction under site plan review. So with that, however, right, the planning board would take action on this application in front of you tonight. In terms of seeker classification, this would be a type 2 action, meaning that the state has already determined that it's not going to have a significant adverse impact on the environment, and classification as type 2 concludes the seeker process on this. And the second comment that I have is, and the applicant, I think, has addressed this already, just to confirm that there were no external site changes, including lighting. And it sounds like there's not going to be any lighting changes external to the project. So, Labella, we don't have any further comments on this.
So Wes, with the proposed, or your suggested, moving forward, suggested changes, so it wouldn't have to necessarily come before the board, the planning board, it still will get reviews by the, building and codes and fire
Yeah.
department and things like that?
Yeah,
for-
internally, the code enforcement officer would take a look at the project, and they would be able to confirm whether or not there were any qualifiers that would trigger the necessity to come before the planning board under site plan review. And then they would also be able to confirm whether or not it's a permitted use, or whether it's a use permitted with a special use permit. So that's another distinction. If for some reason the particular use required a special use permit to come before the planning board, then you would see it. But in this particular case, the entertainment use, it's simply a straight-out permitted use as of right. That's it.
Okay, thanks. Ernie, any questions for the applicant?
Just for curiosity, what are the hours going to be?
You have,
No, I mean, mall-driven. I know Champs and PF Chang's are 11 o'clock, I think, on Friday and Saturdays. Beer Project is maybe midnight on Friday, Saturday, somewhere in that range, but I don't know for sure. Again,
I-
probably based on.
I don't see any
business plan.
problem with it, I just wanted to know.
Okay, great.
okay, is that it? Okay, Al?
No questions.
Joe?
First, I'm glad to see that we've got somebody moving into the space. It's great space, and I'm glad to see that it's being utilized. The stage is depicted as two rectangles. Is that just to fill the space? Nothing?
No, those are, that was a formation of chairs and tables that are being demolished. That's what the space looks like today, so.
Very good. And then I'm very curious about the mood or the ambiance. You indicate in the letter that it's going to be inspired by the opulent supper clubs of the Prohibition era. Is that going to be like classic cocktails, swing music, jazz bands?
I don't know. I think that's the idea. That might be one night. That might be multiple nights. I don't know.
Okay.
There's lots of options.
Just curious.
Yeah, no.
It'd be fun.
Sure.
So, thank you. That's all I got.
Okay, thanks, Joe. I don't have any other questions other than from what I've heard from the rest of the board. So, unless there's a public hearing, so I have to open it up to the public. If there's anyone here who has any questions for the applicant, Dave, come on up. No apologies.
Dave Nankin from 1174 Chaucer Court. I'm just curious, I mean, when this building was built, it wasn't built, was it built to contain a sound that might be coming from the band or from the music or whatever might be there? And the type of entertainment, I'm just curious. You won't be able to answer that probably, but
I mean, it was built as a restaurant. It's a good question, an interesting one. Would you hear loud band music coming out from the room? No, personal opinion, probably not. Maybe unless you're right next to the building, but you certainly can't compete with Route 96 and the Thruway.
Right.
So I would suggest that's probably not an issue.
No,
So, but it's a good question. Thanks.
thank you.
That help? Okay. All right, so entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll move.
Al moves. Ernie seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Public hearing's closed. I have a resolution that I will read for this application. Whereas the planning board made the following finding of facts. This is stage 585, 818 Eastview Mall, application 24 SB 2024. Whereas, a site plan application was received on September 13th, 2024 from Mitchell Design on behalf of Mr. John DeTita, the applicant, by the Secretary of the Planning Board for a site plan entitled Stage 585 site plan application for the property located on 818 Eastview Mall, Victor, New York. There are 7 additional whereases. Now therefore be resolved that the application of Mitchell Design on behalf of Mr. John Datia, site plan entitled Stage 585 Site Plan, received by the Planning Board September 13th, 2024. Planning Board Application 24 SB 2024 be approved with the following conditions. Conditions to be addressed prior to Chairman's signature on the site plan. That one, that no final signatures will be given on the plans until all legal and engineering fees have been paid per fee reimbursement local law adopted November 25th, 1996. Number 2, that the comments in a letter dated October 4th, 2024 from Labella Associates be addressed. And number 3, that any exterior lighting comply with Chapter 131 lighting of the Victor Town Code and approved by the Code Enforcement Officer. Ongoing conditions, both of them are standard, and be it further resolved that the Planning Board Secretary distribute the Planning Board's approval letter. So on that resolution, to hear a motion for approval.
Move.
Ernie moves.
Second.
Joe seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Carried 4-0. Okay, this next item is not a public hearing. It's a recommendation request on a planned development district. Lehigh Place, Victor Heights Parkway, owner Auburn Trail Properties LLC. Mr. Goldman.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. It's nice to be back in front of the board here in Victor. I am here tonight on behalf of Deep Felice Development, and with us tonight are the 2 principals of Deep Felice Development, Mark DeFelice and Frank DeFelice, and the project engineer, Matt Tomlinson from Marathon Engineering. I'm going to do a brief introduction. Matt is going to do the heavy lifting, if you will, relative to the presentation this evening. We're here as part of the multi-stage PDD process with regard to the development of the 14 plus or minus acres located at the far eastern end of Victor Heights Parkway. That is immediately across the street from the FLCC campus and is bordered by the Lehigh Trail further to the east. The frontage of 251 is down this way, and Matt will get into a lot of the details. I'll just talk about the process to date. Process to date entailed an application being made to the town board to start the PDD process. We had a number of meetings, it was 2 to 3 meetings with the town board to discuss the particular application and the nuances of the site itself, the need to have a 4-story apartment building on this particular site with the density that we're talking about. And the town board did send this matter after consideration to the planning board as well as Ontario County Planning, and I believe they declared their intent to be lead agency for seeker on this matter. Ontario County is considering this matter tomorrow night. Of course, we're here tonight. Sketch plan, I note that there's no draft resolution in the back of the room, so I assume we're not going to be seeing a resolution this evening, but we will make our presentation relative to it. With that introduction, I'm often told by the engineers that I step on their feet too much on the presentation, so I'll stop here and let Matt go forward, and I may wrap up at the end of the presentation.
Gary, we can always see your enthusiasm for these, so.
Good evening, Matt Tomlinson, Marathon Engineering. Does the board have a hard copy of the slides or visible
I happen to
there?
have one I'm following along in case I need to ask
Okay.
you to flip back and
I do have a
forth.
handout just with locations of.
That would be helpful.
the visuals that might be helpful to
Thank you.
reference to as we go.
Thank you.
Get a friendly reference.
Thanks, Matt.
If you don't want to. Great, so, thanks. As Jerry mentioned, my name is Matt Tomlinson with Marathon Engineering. We're the site civil engineers on this, and we have gone through several iterations and gotten a lot of very helpful feedback as we've attempted to move this project forward to the point where we're at today relative to design, looking at potential impacts from the heights of the buildings and those kind of things. Jim Fahey is the project architect on the project. He cannot be here tonight, but he briefed me, so I'm sure I can play architect for a little bit as we talk about the buildings and what we're trying to create here. So, as Jerry mentioned, the total acreage is 14 acres. The south and east portion of the site has quite a bit of wetlands on it. We've done a full wetland delineation report, done an archaeological study, done a lot of the backup information that we know both this board, as the planning board wants to review, but also as the town board is the seeker lead agent, we wanted to get out ahead of a lot of those items. Traffic study's been done for the proposed, in order to identify those impacts and what, if any, mitigations are going to be necessary. So in the report that we have submitted in the long-form EAF, we've summarized a lot of that information for the board's considerations, both you guys and the town board. And really what we've identified as the items needing mitigation or further discussion as part of this PDD are two things. One was the wetlands, which we did get a preliminary jurisdictional determination, and so we are avoiding impacts to any of the jurisdictional wetlands as part of this design. We have, and then aesthetics and visuals, which is the big one, right? Because we are proposing a 4-story peaked roof building. We're requesting in the PDD approval for 4 stories and 52 feet in height, or 53 feet as the maximum height of those. And so the main items that we wanted to talk through with the town tonight, or with the planning board tonight, really are, what are those impacts? Because as we started looking at, and again with the support or assistance of the town staff and discussions with the town board of where there was potential for impacts from these in the various spots around the community that we're trying to create, we started taking a look at those and modeling those to see, hey, is it really visible? If it is it visible like an industrial yard off the trail, like a lot of the surrounding properties are, or is it a nice and welcoming community? So what you see on the screen is the proposed building facades, mix of colors, ins and outs, breaking up the facades with porches, masonry on the ground floor and accent levels, and then vinyl siding with trim all the way through. If we can scroll to the next slide, and this is where where the handout that I provided will give some assistance in just locating where we're at as we start to look at it. Location A is at the intersection, the western intersection of Victor Parkway and Route 251, looking kind of kitty corner or towards the project, and a very small portion of roof line may be visible from that point. There's obviously a lot of existing development between us and the project site from that point. Yes, thank you. Yep. So project location is indicated there behind the buildings. We go to the location B slide. Location B is directly in front of the community church that's kind of central between the two ends of Victor Heights Parkway. And as you can see, the project location is indicated behind the existing vegetation and buildings, no visibility from Route 251 there. Location C is the eastern end of Victor Heights Parkway, and that's viewing across the Finger Lakes Community Building with some small elements of the roof line visible, and again, only really from that spot or the break in the vegetation at the entry drive. We tried to pick locations, not that you couldn't see anything, but where we thought it would be the most visible, because we want to determine what, if any, impact that there is to the surrounding area. Location D is from up on Route 96, where we sit up, and that's right near the DeMarco project with with doodlebugs there, where you're elevated up above, and that is not visible over the tree line, which is indicated with the pointer there. Location E and F are along the Auburn Trail. Location E is where vegetation. This picture was taken around this time of year, last year. As you can see, the leaves starting to change. The upper story is visible as you walk along there. Location F is a little bit further up where there's a larger stand of those trees and really not visible beyond. We did not take or do not have any photos with the leaves fully off the trees to be able to analyze that impact, but we are proposing some ground level screening, vegetation amendments, those kind of things on the project side. And then finally, there is a trail connection, location G, near the existing stormwater management facility on the northern portion of the site, and this is where it is the most open to the trail from the property. And there you can see the picnic pavilion as well as kind of that extended view of the westmost, or eastmost building, excuse me. There are 52 proposed units per building, roughly 14 per floor on the upper floors with some amenity and garage space on the first floor. We are proposing several amenities on the project site, including a pool, pavilion with grill stands. There will be a separate leasing and amenity space building. And then on the southmost end of this building that we see here, where the garages, or the garage space on the ground floor does not have a proximate drive aisle for it, there'll be some additional community space with outdoor fire pits and some other community amenities.
And can you explain the parking situation, the garage part of it?
Yeah, absolutely. If we could switch back to the colored site plan, which I think was the second or third slide within the PDD package, that might be helpful. Yeah, great. So each of these proposed buildings on the first floor have a row of garages on the ends of the buildings. So I've highlighted a total of 5 on the ends of those buildings. The amenity space that does not have a drive aisle that I indicated is there on the south end. So those would be first floor garages with door into hallway on the interior. So if you rent an apartment, I believe there'll be an additional charge or something to reserve a garage space. And then we do have exterior, more typical garages on the opposite sides of those for additional covered spaces. Our ratio is roughly, and I'm sorry, I'll have to squint because I printed it really small, 72 garage spaces, I believe, and 228 surface spaces for a total of 300 spaces, so just under 2 spaces per unit. Generally, we're seeing the 1.5 to 1.75 parking ratio for market rate apartments. However, on this project specifically, there's a much higher ratio of 2-bedroom apartments than 1-bedroom, and so we think that that ratio of 1.9 is going to be well supported based on our market study and what we anticipate the demand
Is there
is.
provision for guests, people visiting, all of that?
It's built into those ratios
Okay.
with the apartments. Yep, absolutely. Obviously, we have a lot of detail that we'll be coming back to the planning board for. Our goal really is, again, to advance this back to the town board for consideration of the PDD. We did receive a letter from Wes with Labella reviewing the report that we've put together, similar to other PDDs within the town and that our firm has worked on, with that supporting information indicating that it appears to be complete from an engineering side. But obviously, we're here to get comments from the planning board side as well. And if I left anything out, I'd be happy to answer questions that you might have.
I take a couple of minutes and talk about the origin of all of this and how we got here. As we know, Victor Heights Parkway was developed as a light industrial commercial park. The efforts over the course of the years have been, for the most part, successful, but found that there's not a need for that light industrial commercial type of space at this time. In contrast, Ontario County did a housing study and indicated that within the Victor Farmington sub-area, there is a very high need for additional residential units. What we really have wound up with here is kind of an organic mixed-use type of area, whereas sometimes we try to plan it on paper and try to push developers to create this mixed use. Well, we kind of have it now because we have the business aspect of it. We have the college, we have a church across the street. The residential component is something which is really going to be in addition to the overall eastern end of Victor Heights Parkway. The name of the project indicates our affinity for the trail, and I think that we have representatives from Victor Hiking Trails here this evening as well. And we think it's going to be a wonderful amenity in terms of the benefit of us being able to, with this project, utilize the trail. And I can tell you from my perspective, I live along the trail, Canal Trail in Brighton, and the most fun part for me is when I'm adjacent and can take a look at an interesting residential use which is adjacent as opposed to a bunch of trees or an industrial use when I'm along that trail. So in reality, what this does is that it really helps fulfill that. It addresses the comprehensive plan, which talks about high-density residential within commercial corridors and the like. We think this is a great fit for this particular site.
Okay,
With that, I'll stop until
thanks.
someone has questions.
All right, well, I'm sure there'll be a few.
Yep.
Joe, want to start?
Can you talk a little bit about traffic? Route 251's a state road, 50 miles an hour, I believe, at that point. We're going to be adding, well, if there are a lot of two-bedroom apartments, potentially 300 cars during the course of the day, which is probably double or triple the traffic that comes out of Victor Parkway right now. So if you could speak to that, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. So as Jerry mentioned, part of the goals of higher density development in Victor specifically is to locate those in areas that it does not add a significant load to Route 96, especially as it goes down towards the village and the town center, which we feel this accomplishes. We've got some between the off-ramp and the 251 intersection, but obviously that doesn't push all the way down into towards the village. So I think that there's a benefit there. We did, as I mentioned, have a traffic study completed, which included along routes 251, several intersections, Cork Road, Victor Heights Parkway, both entrances, Phillips Road, and evaluated levels of service along the corridor. Obviously, that corridor has been studied quite a bit over the last few years with the development, and the conclusion is that it has the generated traffic. And this is specific to peak hour, right? So it's still, there are vehicles coming and going, but that it'll have a negligible impact to the operations on Victor Mendon Road, low volume of projected trips from the 155 residential units. At the time, we had 155, not 156, and that no off-site improvements to the road network are recommended. Now, that takes a look at level of service changes from what's out there today, as well as we have good distribution from the site, right? So that means you can go both directions. We're not focusing this entire development onto one intersection, where at that point we most likely would be generating enough traffic at a single intersection to potentially require some type of mitigation.
I'm thinking about the residents pulling out onto Route 251, as much as I am thinking about the loads at the intersections, pulling out into 50-mile-an-hour traffic. I know when people are heading towards Mendon on 251, that big corner by Cork Road, they're fully doing the speed limit. They're not like gaining speed as they approach that entrance to Victor Parkway, and I'm not sure if that should be a concern or is a concern, or was part of your study?
It is part of the study. So we looked at the Cork Road intersection in both ends of Victor Heights Parkway as it comes to there, not just the driveway entrances into the project. So
Okay.
all of those were included in the study area.
I appreciate that. I'm a retired safety person, so. I do have another question about the connection to the Auburn Trail. I see it on the plan. How do you envision that? Is it just like a 3-foot wide asphalt pathway, or is it going to be landscaped? How do you envision that
Yeah, we haven't gotten to that level of detail yet. There's I think going to be there's an intent to make that a focus or an amenity, right? So not only for our residents, but also there's a connection, and we're proposing sidewalk along the frontage of Victor Heights Parkway that connects to that location through the site today. So we do anticipate amending that or making it look nice. That's also going to be between a lot of our amenities and the existing stormwater management facility. So it's not going to feel like you're squeezing in between a row of parked cars. We're trying to make that look nice. The detail of how wide, what the surfacing is, we have not worked out yet.
Have you had, or do you anticipate having discussions with the folks from Victor Hiking Trails?
I know we talked to them on the way out of our last town board meeting, but
Okay.
I'm sure there'll be additional conversations.
Want to talk to him?
And then I don't know where we stand with the solar moratorium. I was recently down in Atlanta, and I noticed surface parking lots were all covered with solar panels. And I just don't know where we are with the moratorium, but it struck me as kind of a neat thing we could be doing.
I'll let,
A 6-month moratorium, so we're in it now.
yeah, and I think they've extended the moratorium, if I'm not mistaken, Wes?
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct. The 6-month moratorium, initial 6-month moratorium, we're either at the end of that or it has just passed, and the town board did adopt an extension to that moratorium
Okay.
for another 6 months. We do not anticipate that it's going to be another 6 months to conclude that process to be able to adopt regulations. We've got some draft regulations prepared, as well as a potential overlay zoning district for solar.
Okay. Thanks. That's all I've got then.
Al?
I guess my concern is just the overall density. I mean, this is extremely high density that we're adding. And of course, right, in the comprehensive plan, right, there was a proposed complete build-out based on what's residential, what's commercial. So this changes the math on that. And concern about the impact to the schools. I mean, we're now proposing a $100 million capital plan right now for the school. A lot is driven by the growth that the school is experiencing. So my primary concern is just overall density. I think it's a lot of units to pack in there. And to build on your concern around parking, even one-bedroom units could, have 2 people living in it and 2 cars and then visitors. So like I said, I just think the density is extreme for the proposed site.
Okay,
That's all I have for this time.
okay. Ernie?
Did you take into consideration that there are 2 ways to come in and out of this area?
In the traffic study, you mean specifically, or?
Or whatever. yeah.
Yes, both for Victor Heights Parkway currently is to the west of our site, a dedicated road. Through our site is a private road. And so we analyzed both ends of that. There is an easement over the private portion, providing ingress, egress rights to all the properties through there. But we looked at the roadway system and surrounding intersections as a whole when we were looking at that, yes.
Is there any plan to ask the state to put traffic lights?
We did do a signal warrant analysis at multiple intersections through there, and none of them meet the warrants. Now, that'll be referred to the state DOT as part of the town board's seeker determination and county referral. So we'll get them to weigh in on our analysis to make sure that they agree with it, but it did not meet it in our study based on the warrants.
This is not going to be only your site that has traffic going in and out of these 2 entrances. There are other businesses there.
That's correct, yes. And we also accounted for background growth in other projects that are before the town in that overall background analysis to establish the level of service at the intersections that were studied.
All I have, Joe.
Okay. Regarding the zoning request for PDD versus rezoning it as a multi-dwelling parcel, I assume you've had that conversation with town board in coming to this conclusion, and the fact that the density is much higher than, as Al pointed out, is probably the background or backdrop to why it's a PDD request rather than a rezoning with variances.
That and variances would be required for height, stories, et cetera. So
Yeah.
Right, the density is roughly 11 units per acre, 11.1 units per acre. And the height is what was mentioned. But the fact of the matter is that this is kind of nestled in an area which provides a little bit of insulation. It's not like a freestanding residential project, which is out there. It's you have to take it in the context of its light industrial surroundings and in the overall context of what is proposed. So the thought process in going the PDD route was to avoid having variances, address the comprehensive plan issue with regard to having a higher density residential in the commercial corridor. And it was something which frankly was well received by the town board, except for one town board member. So we were encouraged to continue along this process by the town board. There wasn't anything that said, we have some real reservations about your density, real reservations about your height, reservations about anything else. The traffic report is extensive, and a lot of the questions came up relative to that. One thing which we should point out is that typically, Matt, isn't it essentially one in multifamily throws off like a half a car per unit during peak hour? 0.5 or something like
From the
that?
traffic study,
Yeah.
I'd have to look at
Yeah.
that. I did want to chime in.
Make sure
on-
you're both speaking closer to the
I'll
microphone,
get
please.
closer.
I did want to mention, I believe that multifamily housing or mixed-use requirement for parking is 1.5 spaces per unit irrespective of bedrooms. And then obviously, if there is any type of commercial or common space that would drive additional vehicles, there's an addition to that. So we are exceeding that underlying code requirement.
Is there a target part of the housing market in terms of type of resident or type of renter you may be looking to? Or is this going to be a diverse, anywheres from, 20-something to 60-something or whatever?
It's designed as a market rate project. I don't know whether Mark or Frank want to weigh in on that at all, but everything that I have been told, and the market study indicates that there's demand all across that scale. So it's not like we're saying that we really need senior housing to the exclusion of younger or anything else. I'm sure we'll weigh in on the school district as well. In my experience, school districts are always bring it on because we want more
Well,
students.
they are,
So-
except for the fact that we have a finite footprint for the way Victor is built, and they're running out of space in a $100 million capital plan. So there's definitely issues on that
Yeah.
campus today. Traffic on the campus, lots of issues.
Right.
And, every development that comes in here says, oh, but we're not going to add, there won't be any children, or there's only going to be, one per every 15 units. Somehow the school just continues to grow at probably the highest rate in the state. So it's a real issue that has to be
Yeah.
addressed.
Yeah,
And-
you're absolutely right. I mean, and we have great population growth, which has occurred in town over the course of the last 10 to 20 years, not only among the multifamilies certainly, but certainly among a lot of our high-end single-family residential.
And again, I
too.
have no doubt there's great demand for housing in Victor, and
And
probably
Farmington.
everywhere in Farmington.
Yep.
right? But at some point, you get to a tipping point where you just can't accommodate the rate of growth that we've been experiencing. So I have some major concerns about the density, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Well, the town board will certainly see our comments and discussion from the minutes, so.
Right.
Anything else you needed to add, Jerry, or?
I think we're set at this point.
Yeah, not unless the board has additional.
Well, I was going to ask Wes to kind of give us some thoughts on the next step here, and
Yeah, one of the things that the planning board will need to do is create some findings with regard to the 11 criteria that are identified in the town code for step one of the two-step process, right? So the recommendation that the planning board provides back to the town board, we will need to go through or identify, for example, number one, the need for the proposed development. And I think largely that's going to be pulled from the applicant's information, just a reflection of, what they've indicated the need for the development is. But if you want to hear more about that, I think now is the time to ask them, as well as in what respects the plan in front of us is or is not consistent with the stated purposes of the PDD. The extent to which the plan departs from the zoning regulations formerly applicable, for example, the light industrial zoning district, to the property in question, and also findings on the existing character of the neighborhood and the relationship, beneficial or adverse, of the proposed development to this neighborhood. Location of principal and accessory buildings on the site in relation to one another, as well as to structures and uses in the vicinity, including bulk and height. That kind of gets me thinking about the particular location up here, right? So right now, I think what you're proposing as the applicant is you're looking to create a PDD just for this area
And further south.
and further south along this side of the road?
Includes all of it, yeah, includes all of it down to
Of the
251.
vacant land
Right.
down to where the
Okay.
daycare is.
And there's no, sorry, Wes, there's no intent to look at that for additional development? This will be the footprint for this parcel?
That is it.
Okay.
Is there any synergy as a developer? Is there any synergy that can be made with the FLCC campus? And is there a reason why maybe this campus wouldn't be included within that PDD? If there is synergy there, I don't know if there is or not. I guess I'd leave that up to
Yeah,
you guys.
I really don't know that there is. I mean, they're kind of in control of their own site and what they do. They're also kind of governed under a different set of zoning rules and criteria in terms of how things are done
Yep.
with schools. So I'd be kind of reticent to mix that because there's a whole body of law that talks about what schools are allowed to do regardless of what the underlying zoning is. And I think that that could get a little bit messy in the whole scheme of things.
Okay.
If I may, before you get back in, we're familiar with the 11 criteria
Oh, okay.
that you have to
Yep.
take a look at. I
All right.
have them right here. And a lot of it is contained in Matt's engineering evaluation and everything which has been set. But we would propose to put in a document, if you will, which basically addresses those criteria if you want us to act as a guide to our presentation, both oral and written, if that's a benefit to the board.
Yeah, so I think it's fine if you would like to do that. I think the town would be willing to accept that as maybe a bit of a guide or maybe just an example of how you would respond to those questions. But ultimately, it would be obviously,
Oh, yeah.
the planning board modifying that to suit your own findings as a board.
And would you be generating those things for us to review? Because as I look at a few of these things, they're pretty technical, and I'm not sure if I've got but I'd be willing to act on your recommendations or at least comment, right?
Yeah, yes, I would draft something, as we have in the past for previous PDDs, right?
First timer.
Labella would put together a draft of the 11 criteria, kind of a straw document for you guys to look at and consider potentially at the next meeting.
Okay.
See if we can get it done as fast as possible, because I'm sure the applicant is looking to get their recommendation as fast as possible.
Okay.
And there have been instances where there's some back and forth. We're not all in agreement, or I should say the planning board is not all in agreement, or there's been some give and take between the applicant, or between the planning board's findings, and there's more conversation to be had with the applicant. So it's not necessarily a slam dunk at the next meeting. I'll say that.
Thank you. Yeah, I started going through the document, and it's heavy going.
It is.
For a history major.
There's a lot of information there.
And we certainly would welcome the opportunity to see any draft resolution and be able to comment on that in advance of the meeting so we can provide some input.
Yeah.
Great.
Yep.
So at the moment, I mean, our action this evening is the act on the request of the town board to be lead agency, and we would have no objection to that, at least as a board, I'm assuming, but.
Yeah, there's a couple of school of thoughts here on the Plan Development District rezoning process, and as it relates to the seeker, right? So as we know, it's a two-step process. There's language in the code that allows for the town board and/or the planning board to consider, as it may be, whether or not to segment the seeker process, whereas the town board does their seeker review on the rezoning map, or the change to the zoning map itself. And then the planning board does a more in-depth seeker with the engineered design at a later date. separate and distinct from the rezoning action. And as long as we adhere to the seeker guidelines and the information on DEC's website, so as not to make it any less protective of the environment, I think we would be okay with that. So if the planning board is interested in responding to the town board's request to be lead agency, my recommendation at this point would be that you consent to that, to the town board being lead agency just for step one of the two-step process.
Yeah, I guess that's where I was headed is, you know, how much do we want to let go, so to speak? I mean, there's a lot of planning, as several of the board members have already made remarks
Right.
on, so.
Code went to great lengths to essentially authorize the segmentation of the environmental review and to have two seeker reviews occur. You know, it says at the beginning, don't give us too much stuff, because then we may have to comment on it.
Yeah.
So basically, we're in concurrence with the fact that we understand that the planning board will, as part of site plan, do their own seeker review relative to it, and the seeker for the establishment of the PDD is the only thing that they're considering at this time.
Yeah.
Okay.
So do you guys have a copy, or have you drafted already kind of a response to the 11 criteria, or is that something you would work on?
Not in a succinct standalone document.
All right.
It is captured, I believe, within the report that we submitted, but we can definitely streamline that to assist with the board.
Okay.
And we don't want to usurp your role as staff to the board either. If you prefer to do it on your own and we'll comment on yours, that's fine too. We just made an offer, that's all.
Yeah. Feel free. Why don't you take a stab at what you would like to put in there, and I'll be working on mine, and if I need to incorporate some of the information that you have, the planning board would probably consider it.
Great.
Okay. Anyone else? Comments, questions for Wes? Ernie?
Not tonight.
Okay. All right, so how do we proceed with that segmentation declaration to the town board?
You could make a motion. I understand we don't have a written resolution here. You can make a motion that, or someone on the board can make a motion that we respond to the town board's request and agree that they should be lead agency for step one
Step
of the
one.
two-step
Okay.
PDD process.
We don't have a town
Oh,
board representative.
Whereas the town board has given us a document that basically asks us to sign off on no objections to designate them as lead agency under seeker, lead agency for step one, correct?
Correct.
So if we modified this and responded back, then that would be, as long as the board was accepting of that approach, then that's the resolution we could make this evening. And then that would help move the process along.
Okay.
Would you like me to move to?
Well, let's
Mark it up.
mark it up, yeah. So the statement from the town board for this response is, we, as a town planning board, have no objections to the designation of the Victor Town Board as lead agency for the project under seeker. I would say for the project under step one of seeker, or lead agency for step one of the project under seeker.
Yeah, I would say under step one of the PDD rezoning process.
Here, I'll let you put that on, because I'm not going to try to read. And Lisa can refine that, and I'll sign it once the board's acted on it. On Friday, I guess. Okay.
Can you read that?
Yeah, probably. So, whereas the town board, the Victor Town Board has requested all interested and involved agencies to respond to their request for being lead agency for this project, and we can flower that up with the name of the project and everything. The planning board does not have an objection to the designation of the Victor Town Board as lead agency for step one of the two-step PDD rezoning process under seeker. So I'll need a motion to accept that. Very simple.
So move.
Joe moves. Ernie seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, carried 4-0, and we'll pass that along to the town board. Gary, you look like you want to say something.
No, I don't.
Okay,
Other than to say thank you.
all right. I guess unless you have anything else, we're done with this application for the
Okay.
evening?
Great.
If I could, just from a timeframe standpoint,
Step a little closer to the mic.
yep, we're going to generate the document that we talked about. We will provide that back to Wes. Timeframe for getting it back for consideration, what should we, 2 weeks before the next meeting, going to be sufficient? Meaning Wes and I have to talk before then, but just from a timeframe standpoint, to
Yeah.
make sure we get you what you need in advance.
I can put you on October 22nd if you guys are ready for it.
It depends on how much time Matt gives Wes to
Yeah,
respond.
that may not be enough time. I'm thinking that we might have to wait until
We have one board meeting in November,
November. Is it late in November or early?
16th?
It's
something?
November 12th, and it is very full.
Oh, it is, isn't it?
It's going to be extremely full. I got a lot in today.
Yeah.
And we're carrying
Well,
over.
those are mine, so I'll be here
Yes.
anyway. But
I don't think it would be unreasonable for us to talk about, we will have progressed to some degree, these 11 criteria for consideration. And it may well be worth having it on the next agenda on the 22nd, even if it's not yet 100%.
To have that
because
conversation.
there's going to be some conversation.
All right. So let's,
I'll call Wes tomorrow.
Yes.
Got it. Thank
I
you.
would do that. You guys can work out how complete it is to make it worthwhile to be on the next meeting, but it sounds like we can at least have that discussion to further that application, so. All right. So I'm going to flip this over and say, we're going to go back to the first application, Victor Heights Parkway subdivision. Is there anyone that shown up yet, right?
I don't see them.
This is odd. If there's no one here, I can kind of speak to this application. We are not the applicant. We are the proposed buyer of one of the buildings. And
I'll be glad to hear your comments. We're all here and it's a short evening.
and my former associate is the principal of the seller, and so to that extent, I know what we're here for tonight. This application was at the zoning board. I saw your draft resolution. It was at the zoning board last night for consideration of the setback variance on area. That matter was tabled, but in the interest, our client is anxious to see this process move forward as the buyer. So if the board sees fit to take the good advice of Labella Engineering and all the work that's been done so far and declare the sketch plan to be complete, we would request that board take action on that.
Well, are you prepared to at least introduce what we're doing this?
I can. I certainly can.
All right.
I'm good.
well,
I think I'm good.
You're good at winging it. It's not
I
a
think I'm
public
good.
hearing, so you should
I
be
have a
okay.
tendency to look over people's shoulders in my office even if I'm not involved with it, so I have an idea.
like that.
115 to 17 Victor Heights Parkway is a parcel which contains two buildings. Those two buildings are certainly now in common ownership, but the current owner wishes to sell one of those buildings, and in order to do that, we need subdivision approval. And since the buildings are configured as they are, the lot line would run right along here, and the setbacks would be diminished. Essentially, yeah, we could even term it a cluster subdivision, if you will, but at the end of the day, it's an existing condition right now that they are looking to ultimately divide the two parcels for sale. There's active work going on right now with regard to cross-access easements, with regard to taking care of any cross elements necessary in order to make this work between the two parcels as individually owned parcels. But that's basically what we're here for.
So to that end,
Yes,
regarding cross-lot access easements
yes.
and working on such, the thing I was, I don't want to say concerned, but made this a more complicated was this driveway in the front.
Yeah.
Starts on this lot, crosses across the corner of the building and into this parking, and they're all diagonal, I'll call it parking spaces. And then the loading docks are all in the back, so that means that a truck servicing this building has to come in the other driveway through a parking lot and then back into these loading docks.
And.
That's
you know,
my challenge with separating these
But
and
it-
finding
but
a right way to get it done.
Yeah, I understand. I understand your concern. And as we take a look at it, you know, the thing is that these two buildings have not necessarily operated in tandem with each other already. So there has to have been some cooperation between the tenants, not necessarily the owners, in terms of dealing with the issue that you talked about. And maintaining the single driveway is what is being proposed. There's not really proposed to be a whole lot of exterior changes. So I think that is going to be an essential element. I think as you proceed in the subdivision process, you may want to have Wes and your attorney review those cross-access documents to make sure that you're satisfied that it creates a safe condition for both parcels.
I mean, technically, it's two owners on a single driveway, which is, at least for residences, kind of allowed, but
Yeah.
I'm more worried about the interaction between people getting to their vehicles, trucks coming across, trying to, you know, who maintains this little sliver of lot right here, so you gotta have that, you know, for paving and whatever, maintenance. All of that can be challenging.
Yeah.
I'll leave that to the lawyers.
Yeah, yeah, and again, I'm not representing the application all the way through.
Understood.
But at the end of it all, I think there really needs to be generated some good documents that the town can feel comfortable with and that the parties can feel comfortable with in terms of the operation of it so that it works well for everybody.
I mean, I don't know if there's any code issues with this whole arrangement.
I'm not familiar with any building code issues. It certainly exists. We can take a look at it. I think that there is enough, there aren't any window openings, if you will, I think, along the property line or something like that, that would create building code issues. I don't think there are any other, I had heard something about perhaps there may be a parking setback under code, and there may need to be a modification of the existing variance, but it's all pretty technical at that point.
I mean, as long as you have enough parking spaces on this lot for this building and that lot for that building, and the common space in between here, which cuts right through two of the spaces, I think, as I recall on the plan.
It's a little shared, yeah.
Yeah, right. You know, that can be worked out, I think. I'll open up for the board, if any questions. Ernie?
Did everybody see Scott's email came late in the day?
I didn't see it, no. Was that for addressing this particular? If that's for the other application, isn't it, Ernie?
He doesn't
For the,
put a reference on it, but
That was, I think, in regards to the defolice.
Yeah, I thought that was for the other, because he talks about PDD. That's what, I asked that question earlier about, I assume that's why that's PDD, multiple dwelling.
Yeah, Matt told me we were first on the agenda. I said, no, we're third. It's like,
So,
he saw Victor Heights Parkway, and so it's kind of natural.
yeah, so this is for the other application, I think, Ernie, but,
was it?
yeah.
You didn't put a reference on it, so.
Yeah, it talks about multi-dwelling and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, anyway, do you have any questions, Ernie?
No.
For this? Al?
No, no
No?
questions.
No.
No? Okay. Wes, any other input that I missed?
Well, we did issue a letter October 4th. Seeker, looks like it's an unlisted action. We did mention the side setback, which is why they're in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals. And we did comment also on the lot access. And let's see, I think they did indicate in their letter dated September 2nd, upon subdivision, the two parcels will share ingress and egress and parking and generally operate identically to how they operate today. And we did mention the need for reciprocal access easements. So as this is a sketch plan, we don't have a problem with the planning board moving ahead tonight, just identifying that, yeah, the sketch plan's complete. And as the draft resolution indicates, it does acknowledge that the planning board does find that the proposed lot configuration depicted in the sketch would require the applicant to obtain an area variance for the side setbacks, and that the planning board would be unable to provide final subdivision approval until such time that an area variance is approved by the ZBA.
Okay.
So I think you're fine to move forward with a sketch plan resolution if you're so inclined. And then we'll wait to receive the,
Yeah, it's it's sketch plan.
Yeah.
I actually do have a question. It's not, well, I don't know. If we were in an urban environment, two properties this close together wouldn't really matter much, two separate tax parcels. And I get I'm not sure why the setback issue is an issue other than it's a violation of code. Is it a technical or a safety or a fire issue?
Is there, that's a pre-existing condition.
Yeah, right, it's there. It's not like they're asking to build new building too close.
Right.
Okay.
So, and one of my thoughts on that line of thinking, I guess, was the distance between those two buildings looks tiny there, but if you
Yeah.
actually look at Google Street View, there's a lot of space. There's 2 rows of trees and a center walkway along there. That alleviated any concern I had about that
Okay.
piece of it, so,
Yeah, mine was more like, is there a technical thing that
Yeah,
I'm kind of missing
right.
here? So,
okay,
thank you.
all right. Any,
I haven't fully parsed the application, but the fact of the matter is that if they probably could have proceeded as a 2-lot cluster subdivision, stayed at this board. But they didn't.
we're not going to complicate it.
But they didn't.
Or make it a PDD. And then we wouldn't-
You could do that too.
Al loves those, I can tell.
That's right. That's the purpose, not to have variances.
All right, so did you just actually read the resolution, Wes, or at least,
just finding number 7.
yeah, okay. All right, so. All right, I will then read this resolution for sketch plan application completion. For 115, 117 Victor Heights Parkway, application 9 SK 2024, whereas planning board made the following findings of fact. And there are 7 of them. Wes read number 7. I don't know, did you change anything on number 7, Wes, when you were reading that? So, good. So now therefore be resolved that regarding the sketch plan application of Victor Heights Campus LLC, blah, 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 application 9 SK 2024, the planning board acknowledges receipt of a complete sketch plan plat application, and be it further resolved that the planning board secretary forward a copy of this resolution to the applicant. Do I hear a motion for approval of that resolution?
Move.
Ernie moves.
Second?
Joe seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
There you go, Jerry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Made it worth your while. this evening.
Bonus work.
Yeah. I'm sure they'll see your bill.
I know.
Good job, Jerry.
Kick it off.
Nice to see you again.
Great seeing you guys.
Thanks. Okay,
Jerry? Jerry?
Jerry?
You want this?
you want the copy of the resolution? You got it? Oh, there you go.
All right.
Before we adjourn, for next year, my term as chairman is up, so I'm not asking for a decision tonight, but please think if you're interested in being chairperson for the planning board for next year or 2. So I think, Joe, you're renewing this year, is that correct? Are you renewing, re-upping as,
Yes.
on your board position?
Tina asked me if I was interested,
Okay,
but if she allows me,
Uh-huh.
I'll
okay.
be the vice chair.
All right, we have 3 more meetings for the rest of the year, so I'd like to get that squared away. Ernie's retired.
He needs to fill his day with something.
Well, yeah, just think about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Whatever. I mean, I'm trying to be out front with this, so, I guess that's all I had.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Have a great week, everyone.
Thanks. Oh, my mic was off. I want to make sure you